Hi and welcome to another edition of the weekly motoring programme 4 Wheels Good. Well, this week we continue our coverage of Europe's most important motor show at Geneva. Ford's new coupe is under the spotlight this week, and we have an exclusive interview with Ford boss Jack Nassar, who has some optimistic words for workers at their Halewood factory in Merseyside. We'll also show you the two concept Rover Minis unveiled and talk to the man who designed the outstanding new BMW M Roadster. GINNY, BUCKLEY and Mike Rutherford now report from Switzerland.
Well, we warned you last week, the Geneva Motor Show is the happening show of 1997. In fact, it's so big, it's so good that we
had to bring you some more this week. And the big news of the day came from Ford. They unveiled a stunning-looking coupe called the Puma. It's based on the Fiesta platform. I managed to catch up with Jack Nassar, the head of Ford's operations in Europe, and ask him about the future of the small car market.
Well, the small car market is the largest single segment in the car market in Europe. At the moment it's running at about 32% of the car market. We think it'll grow to at least 35% of that segment. But it's changing in nature quite dramatically, whereas in the old days the small car market was probably made up of two, three, four different models being manufactured and developed by major volume manufacturers. Now there's an incredible variety of products that are available to customers, and the small car market is being divided into what we call niche segments. Now some of these niches are quite large. They may be 100 to 150,000, 200,000 vehicle niches, and it's important, I think, that we offer our customers the choice, a variety of products that suit their particular needs and their particular values and their particular personalities. And that's why the car, the Fiesta and now the Puma really address the small car market from very different customer wants and needs.
Yeah, you talked about the Puma that we see behind us. It's a stunning looking vehicle. It's a coupe, as you like to say, or a coupe. The coupe market is very crowded, it's very packed. Is it possible for you to produce a vehicle like this and make it financially viable? Because you're producing fairly small numbers, aren't you, in comparison with Fiesta, Mondeo and the rest?
Well, the reason that Puma will be financially viable is because we're really choosing the best of both worlds. We're taking all of the high volume, mass-produced components and manufacturing process for those processes and parts that are common to our other car lines. Then we're taking the unique pieces, the very unique body that Puma has, and they're basically built in a very low volume, agile manufacturing process. And then we combine the two, so you get the benefits of low volume manufacturing, small batch building, together with being able to produce the vehicle with high volume products such as the Fiesta.
Now, we've seen a lot of manufacturers working on the one floor pan, and you've done this with Puma, it's the Fiesta. What about something like an Escort with a mini MPV on it? Is that something we're likely to see? Because in Britain now, certainly, Puma completes the range for you. The only thing you don't have is a small MPV. Are there plans for that?
Well, clearly, that's the direction that we're heading for in Halewood. And Halewood will continue to produce Escort, but we're looking at derivative products that can be built in Halewood, and Halewood would then become the unique and only European source for those products. And I think a very interesting concept is what we call a multi-activity vehicle. In other words, a vehicle that has greater seating and package flexibility than present-day saloons.
I know that feelings at Halewood are running extremely high. I'm from the north of England and we certainly all feel it there. How confident are you that Halewood is going to be an important part of Ford's future in Europe?
Well, I mean, there are no guarantees for anyone and any of us, and there's certainly no guarantees for any one particular region of the world. But I believe strongly that the plan for Halewood is good. It's good for the workforce, it's good for British jobs, and it's good for Ford. It's also good for the customers because we're able to offer a variety of products. And I've got a strong opinion that when it's good for so many elements of society, then we'll make it work. We haven't finally concluded exactly what the plans are, and we need a little bit of help to get there, but the cooperation of the workforce at Halewood has been particularly good.
We see the Puma behind us, and it's certainly a car that exudes personality. What brief did you set your designers? What did you want this car to say?
It was interesting because, as I said, I sat down with Claude Lebeau when we were really philosophizing about what this car should be. And we didn't want anything straight exotica. We didn't want that. We wanted it to be strong, powerful looking, but at the same time have a personality of energy and vitality, and really have a strong identity with the design trends that Ford has been championing over recent years. Not to have exactly a family resemblance to our other products, but that you could tell from the appearance of the vehicle and the vehicle dynamics and handling that there was a strong Ford DNA in the design element.
I'm joined now by Mark Payton. You should know actually the atmosphere between Mark and I is a little tense at the moment because we've just been rowing off camera about the fact that he didn't invite me to the What Car Awards this year. But that aside, Mark, it's an interesting show, Geneva. It always is, of course, but we're seeing this new crop of sort of mini MPVs, if you like, and the Renault Scenic in particular is a car that means an awful lot to you.
Well, it does. I mean, we've just made it Car of the Year. It's a funny thing in a way. In France at the moment, Scenic is outselling the other Meganes. So there are 5 cars springing off that one platform, 2 to 1. So the thing's been this absolutely roaring success in France. The question is it going to do the same in the UK? Now, again, we were arguing a second ago. You don't think it's comfortable enough. That's your argument. I'd say it is. I'd say it's a really intelligent car. The problem is that every car nowadays, they're getting back into styling. They're making things good looking. You and I spoke at, I think it was Geneva Motor Show last year, and we were looking at things like the 406 Coupe, and we said, well, there's a beautiful car, miles away from the world of sort of Euro jelly molds. Yep. Now they're beginning to make smart cars. Something that you get into and you think, God, somebody really thought about that. And I think it deserves respect for that alone. Yeah,
I agree with you in that anything that's different, anything that attempts to break the mould has to be a good thing. But I just feel that, I just wonder if it's being done for the sake of being done. I mean, if it's a mini if it's a mini MPV, if you like, the other way of looking at it is that it's just an ordinary 5-seat, 5-person hatchback, just with a slightly different design.
No, well, come on, let's have a look at the headlines. 1, you sit higher so you get a better view of the road. 2, same size as a small hatch, so it's easy to park. 3, you can take the rear seats out, so if you've got a growing family, you can turn the thing into a van. 4, the rear seats slide, so that you can move your kids closer to you, so they're easier to reach. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. But the downside of some of those things is that high seating position, I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but when I'm in that car, when I'm in something like a BMW, I feel like I'm at one with the car. It sounds very Anorak-ish, but you know what I mean. When I'm in the Scenic, when I'm in the Scenic, I feel like I'm in a van or something, and I'm almost a separate item to the car itself. I'm perched too high. I don't feel at one with the car. And as for this business about taking the seats out, big deal. You could have bought a 2CV 15 years ago and taken the seats out. That's hardly new, is it?
Oh no, that's absolute rubbish. Look at the space the Megane gives you. You can have a 5-seater, even with the seats in place. You've still got more luggage space than you would in any 5-door family hatchback.
All right, we'll beg to differ on that one, because you're a fan and I'm not exactly. Let's talk about some of the other cars here. The A-Class. Interesting, Mercedes have come in with this car a little earlier than we expected. There have been so many pictures of it and so many sort of leaked photographs that I'm a little bit underwhelmed with it now that I've actually seen it in the flesh.
All I want to do is, I haven't had a chance to actually sit in the thing yet and and get a feel for it. I've got to admit, I'm the same as you. I mean, it's the great journalist disease, isn't it? You see hundreds of pictures, you're just numb to the bloody thing by the time it arrives. The one thing I'm curious about, they're going to sell this thing for about 14 grand.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Mercedes dealers will start having customers coming through the door they've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And that was an argument I had, well, they would say this, wouldn't they? BMW, one of the senior chaps in BMW gave me that argument recently and said it may actually affect the overall kind of perception of Mercedes franchises by bringing something right in at the bottom end of the market, which for Mercedes, that is the bottom end.
Yeah.
Again, we've got to say it's a smart car, isn't it?
I'm not sure also if the guy that's going out spending 50 grand on a Mercedes, or even more perhaps, is going to be impressed by the fact that people can also get on the Mercedes bandwagon for about 14 grand. It's lowering the perception of the marque, surely.
Yeah, it's always a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. I think BMW still manage to do it, don't they? They go from about 14 grand for the cheapest compact up to sort of 70 for a 750 IL. So.
Okay, what about the Ford Puma? That's another unveiling at this show. A lot of noise being made about that. Interesting design.
Well, it's funny, again, it's a journalist disease. We get numbed to things that are good. I mean, when Puma came out, a few people in my office said, God, that looks nice. What a lovely looking car. But I remember just 5-6 years ago, a cover of car with hundreds of little pictures of boxes on it. We were saying, do we have to put up with another sort of Euro box when all cars looked exactly the same? Manufacturers are getting braver, and Puma comes from the people who used to be the home of blandness. It's quite a funky car, and we know it'll drive well. It's working off a Fiesta platform.
Well, you expect an awful lot from the Geneva show, and it always lives up to it, but you do normally expect the Europeans to steal the scene, but not this year, because Rover have come up trumps. They've unveiled 2 mini concepts, Spiritual and Spiritual 2, and from the reaction of the press around here, they proved to be very, very popular. If you're a Mini enthusiast and that car holds a special place in your heart, and this is one man you might like to meet. This is Jeff UPEX, and he's the design and concept director for Rover, the man responsible for this huge image change that the Mini has undergone. You must have had such a sense of responsibility on your shoulders over the last couple of years.
Well, I certainly have. I mean, this is the sort of a fantastic opportunity for a designer. I guess if, when I was training, somebody said, you will be designing the new Mini, I wouldn't have believed it, really. So, you know, we're designing an icon here, or replacing an icon.
Where do you start with something like that? Do you just kind of go complete? What do you do? Do you have an idea session? Do you throw away the old sketches, or do you try and keep some of the heritage there?
No, I mean, heritage for Mini is very important. There are lots of people out there who, you know, have a 40-year allegiance to this car. We've had lots and lots of thoughts. These are just 2 of the thoughts we've had about Mini, and we've taken a very particular approach. We showed the ACV30 car at Monte Carlo a couple of months ago, and that was really about the spiritual heritage of Mini. This is more about the engineering heritage. So we've taken an approach that, you know, if Alec Isagonis was around now, he would have taken the same approach to this car.
Now, you're sort of saying to us that, oh, this is just a hint, this is just the ideas, but surely you don't have products here unless you're pretty sure or pretty certain that this is going to give us a good idea. How close do you think the new Mini will look to one of these?
It won't look like either of these cars. You made the point about this just being a thought. We've had several thoughts about this car. Because it's such a responsibility, we're actually trying to gauge people's reaction as well. So we're as interested in other people's opinions as the opinions we hold ourselves about this car, because actually the new Mini is so important to us.
Is that important that you're prepared to invest all this money into basically what is just a straw poll? Is it just to say, okay, well, here they are, what do you think?
No. These cars were already designed. Because we spend a lot of money, we will be spending a lot of money designing and building the new Mini, we want to make sure we get it right.
What about Spiritual 2? Do you think you've got Mercedes running a little bit? Because it's a hint of the A-class there, isn't it?
Well, obviously I wouldn't agree with you, but we because of the ability of the Spiritual platform, we recognise that actually if we stretched it a bit, we can actually make a very competitive car with a very good package, which is Spiritual 2. And it's not meant to compete with Mercedes-Benz. It was still a Mini. Mini as the original brand was basically a whole range of products, including Countryman and Van and Moke and all sorts of things. And I guess to a certain extent you could even say that the Austin and Morris 1100s were part of the Mini family, and they were incredibly space and package efficient, which is what Spiritual 2 is.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of space inside, isn't it? Can you, how much space have we got?
Well, it's probably about, I mean, given that the car's about the same length as a, let's say, a Peugeot 106, the interior space is the equivalent of a 7 Series BMW.
It's incredible.
So
How have you managed that?
Limousine size. How we managed it? It's basically the way that the components are fitted into the vehicle. The engine is actually in the middle, under the floor. That means you can actually use the space for people most effectively.
It's very interesting. I think what they're saying about this car, it's not the next Mini, it's the Mini after next. It uses various bits of technology that are still a few years away. For example, the engine is under the rear seats, whereas the next Mini will have a front transverse engine, just like the first Mini. But it uses very interesting bits of technology, but essentially it's the styling cues that we're interested in. They very cleverly picked some of the styling aspects of the original Mini and integrated it into a very modern shape, and I think the next Mini will have quite a lot of this in it.
So this isn't one of these concepts where we get a taste of it and then the real thing actually looks nothing as exciting as this? Because it looks very visually very unusual and exciting. Do you think the next Mini will look like this?
It will. I mean, the designers have been very clever. Even very subtle things such as the front weld that goes down towards the wheel arch, that's something the original Mini had. You wouldn't necessarily pick it out, but it's something that says Mini to you. It gives it a Mini face, and I think this has that.
What kind of price do you think this is going to retail at?
Well, Rover are marketing the new Mini very differently to the old Mini. It's no longer part of every family. It's more of a prestige car. It's more of a lifestyle car. So we're probably looking at, you know, £12,000 to £15,000. It's going to be a bit more expensive, but a bit more special.
So, a new type of Mini, but not at a Mini price. Well, after the break, more stories from the Geneva Motor Show, including how you can drive a new Porsche Boxster in the comfort of your living room. Hi and welcome back to Four Wheels Good. In this part, we'll look at every delectable curve of the new BMW Roadster and find out exactly how they got there. But first, it's true that the life of the international motoring journalist is nothing but party after reception. For Ginny Buckley, Porsche threw out the red carpet.
You've heard of follow the yellow brick road. Well, it's follow the red carpet. Easy.
You may be wondering why the red carpet and why Porsche have invited us here to a television studio in the centre of Geneva. Well, the answer is here, the Porsche Boxster. For many of you, it's the ultimate dream machine. But at £34,000, it may be just a little bit out of your reach. But don't despair, because you too can share the driving experience. Porsche and Sony have teamed up to create a virtual reality Boxster. Yes, a couple of £100 will get you a Sony PlayStation and the Boxster Challenge to enable you to experience firsthand the thrill of racing in a Porsche Boxster. Adrian, as a company, what do Porsche get out of association with something like this?
I think the main thing that we get is the opportunity to present our product to a far wider audience than the cars themselves. It gives people the chance to enjoy the concept of a Boxster without having to buy the car, which is, for young people, a pretty important thing.
I suppose in a way what you're also doing is getting them as teenagers, so it's getting that brand loyalty in very early. Is there a degree of that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be perfectly open with you. The thought of exposing this product to young people is very positive to us. It's a great design, it's a young design, and we think that young people will really enjoy it. And the chance to play on this kind of software and experience the real life kind of dynamics of the car, which have been built into this software, we think people will enjoy that.
How happy are you with the game? How close is it to the real Porsche?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't play computer games myself on a regular basis, but I know the amount of development work that's gone into it, and the time that the Sony team has spent with the team at our development centre in Weissach. and they have really tried to build in as many inputs of the real car as they possibly can. And the end result is a game that behaves like the real car. So it's not fast and furious and unrealistic, it's the way that a Boxster drives, so it's a true test drive.
Just on a more serious note now, Adrian, the last sort of couple of years have seen a big turnaround in Porsche, certainly in the UK. Yep. It must be quite an exciting time for you to join the company. What can we expect over the next 12 months? What are you going to bring to it?
Okay. Well, I've already bought a lot. I've been with the company for 7 years, although I've only recently been appointed to MD. I think the next 12 months, we have Boxster. We've launched the car, and the success at launch has been phenomenal. But that's not good enough. We have to keep our feet on the ground and develop the business in terms of delivering even better levels of service. We already have a good reputation, but we don't stand on our laurels. We want to develop the way we look after our customers and bring new people into the Porsche brand. Boxster as a product will help us do that, and the PlayStation will help us do it in 20 years' time. So it's consolidating both of those products.
With me now is PASCAL JARRY from Sony, who developed the game. PASCAL, surely using Porsche, it's just a gimmick really, isn't it? How realistic an experience can it actually be?
Well, it's not really a gimmick because all the proper parameters of the Porsche are in the game. But what was the most important was not to make us something realistic. The most important was to give back the feeling of driving a Porsche, which is quite special. And I think we did it well. Porsche is very serious, so you can say it's not for kids. But we wanted to make really a game out of that. And we had the perfect mixture, I think, which is fun and realism all together.
You can take the Boxster challenge on your own, or you can race against a partner. You can choose from 7 distinctive characters, including Marco the mechanic, Rachel the model, and even Dan the kickboxer. You can take your Porsche on one of 5 challenging tracks, 4 of which are fictitious, and one of which is based on a recreation of Porsche's legendary Weissach testing facility in Germany. Well, we'll be testing the Porsche Boxster out for real on 4 Wheels Good in coming weeks. But before we do that, I've got to go and convince the Porsche PR people that I'm actually a much better driver than they've just seen in there.
Well, here we are on the Suzuki stand. Big event yesterday, lots of razzmatazz for the unveiling of this little thing called the Wagon-R. If I hadn't shut that door, I wouldn't have known what this was called. It's obviously a very small city car from the Japanese manufacturers, and it's come in for a lot of stick, but I actually quite like it. These vehicles, when you're inside, have an awful lot more room than you might imagine. Lousy boot space, great fun to drive, and of course the key thing with a car like this is the price. At this stage we don't know exactly what it's going to weigh in at, but if you think about the Daihatsu Kiori that we saw yesterday for £6,000, if you think about the Seat Arosa that's coming in at $6,995, this thing, thank you very much madam, another satisfied customer. We're trying to do a TV programme, she just walks it, don't worry about it, yeah. This thing should be coming in at about the same sort of money. So, like I said, quite interesting styling, and it seems to me the sort of vehicle, as this one proves, that can be customised for the kind of street warrior brigade, where cosmetics are more important than perhaps engineering excellence. And if you think of what Suzuki have done with their little 4-wheel drive vehicles and how they've become almost cult cars, and cheap cult cars at that, I see no reason why this one couldn't go the same way.
Many have criticised BMW's Z3 Roadster as being seriously underpowered. This is the version to make them eat their words. It's the 2.8. It's on sale now for an August delivery. For £27,000, you'll get an incredible vehicle that will take you from 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, capable of a top speed of over 130 miles per hour. But wait, if that's not enough for you speed freaks, then just come with me and take a look at this. Yep, if you can wait until early 1998, then just under £40,000 will buy you this, the mighty M Roadster. Are you ready for the technical bit? 0 to 60 in 5 and a bit seconds, capable of 155 miles per hour. What? Not fast enough for you? Well, that's what the engine's limited to. Can actually do over 170. It's got a 6-cylinder engine, an absolute stack of torque, and to use a technical term, it goes like stink. Well, if you can see through the crowd of people behind me, like bees around a honeypot, there is the mighty M3 Roadster. Chris, it must be good for you to see it here at Geneva.
Absolutely. It's actually the M Roadster, although it's got the M3 engine, the 321 brake horsepower engine. It's actually called just the M Roadster, and it's the ultimate incarnation of the Z3 that you drove a couple of weeks ago down in Portugal.
What are the main technical differences?
Well, it's got a number of detail differences in the suspension, because effectively you've got nearly triple the power of the 1.9, and so it has slightly stiffer suspension. It obviously has bigger wheels and that kind of thing, but I mean the most important thing is the engine. It's straight out of the M3. It's a 3.2 litre 6-cylinder with variable valve timing, all these sort of the very latest technical developments to make the engine as potent and as flexible as possible.
To quote your managing director, Kevin Gaskell, it's a car that goes like stink now.
Yeah, well, Kevin and I were driving it a couple of days ago for the very first time on the roads of Spain, and it is an astonishingly fast car, but it isn't fast and wild. It's actually beautifully controlled. It's very safe to drive. It's very comfortable too. You'd think it was rock solid and was going to shake you to smithereens, but it's not. It's just a beautifully formed motor car that you can tootle along at 30 miles an hour and feel, oh, this is wonderful, wind in the hair, or you can actually drive it fast. You can drive it on a race circuit and it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, you mentioned the race circuit there. As a manufacturer, you're producing a car here that's limited to a top speed of 155. It's capable of an awful lot more than that. Does that fit well, do you think, in today's market? You know, road deaths, so many, we hear so many of them, so many speed related. Is that a difficult balance for you as a manufacturer to get?
Well, it's a difficult subject, because there are some people that would like to see speed limiters on cars. I mean, we would be totally against that. Actually, we believe it's unsafe to have a limit at 70 miles an hour. The truth is, we some years ago took a decision that we would limit our cars to 155. Now, of course, you can't do 155 miles an hour in real road conditions. More important is actually what it does between, let's say, 30 and 70 or 30 and 80 miles an hour. And it's the ability to respond, and it's all that latent power, that torque, that will give you the responsiveness you want as a driver, or you need. Not only that, this thing brakes from 60 to 0 in 2.8 seconds. So, I mean, it's got the very best brake technology as well. And safety is an integral part of a powerful motor car if it's well built and well engineered.
Well, we're joined now by the man who designed the new BMW Z3, Chris Bangle, who's suffering a bit today because he's got a sore throat and it's kind of hot in here. But Chris, you can get through it. Congratulations on the car. I can't believe that some of my journalistic colleagues were actually criticising the styling of this. I mean, I'm not just saying this because you're standing with me, but great design.
Well, it is a great design, and I think you have to give the credit where it's due, and there's a whole team that designs these cars, and so I'll pass your compliment on to them, because they really do a lot of work to make these designs come out, and this one in particular is one of our favorites.
I mean, what is the process? You have your design team, you're the chief, at the end of the day you have to sign off the design. How does it work? Somebody just comes to you with some sketches, or do you use these CAD machines? Are pens and pencils banned from the design studio at BMW?
No, au contraire. You know, it's a hell of a lot easier to sign off something done by professionals, and you know, when you have a really good team, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot more fun. And we like to use the most modern technologies. Naturally, we want to make our cars come through with the best amount of quality all the way through to production to the client. But we don't want to do anything that's going to slow down or stop that beautiful creative flow. And boy, if you need crayons, we'll let you use crayons too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just that one or two car manufacturers, and frankly, I don't believe them. They say to me that everything these days is done by computer. Car designers still have to know how to pick up a crayon or a felt pen or a pencil and actually draw, don't they?
Well, I feel very strongly about that we're perhaps over-focused on a process and forgotten what our true tradition and heart is all about, and that's really being great creative sculpture. Right. These are the greatest sculptures on wheels.
And if we're talking about the architecture of this car, it seems to me that you've struck the perfect balance between that unmistakable modern BMW look with a bit of retro thrown in as well.
Well, that, of course, was the goal. I think you see a lot of details and a lot of form here, which says not only the past glory of BMW, but also where we're going in the future. I mean, this is definitely a car for now, a car for the future, but there's some things on this you just can't stop touching.
I mean, this bonnet, to everybody else out there, just an ordinary bonnet, just like any other bonnet, but it kind of sets a world record, this bonnet, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I've been told this is one of the world's largest pressings for a bonnet, but to me the most important thing is we've got this form, this beautiful, beautiful power bulge going across this without any disrupting cuts on it. And that's where the modern technology has to support these classic design rhythms.
And of course, it's not exactly inexpensive to design a car these days, is it? I mean, people will be staggered by the amount of money that might just go into a little bit of tweaking of a corner or the front grille or something like that.
Well, particularly at BMW, we want to do it right. Yep. And doing it right means you have to invest the time and the energy again and again to make sure the final piece is the highest quality.
Anything, looking back on it, anything you would do differently or might tweak in the future when it's going through a midlife change or a midlife update?
Well, we like to think that we design these cars for the real long term. I mean, BMW is one company that people are serious about collecting, and I don't think it would be, fair to all our fans to say, well, we didn't do it right, we want to do it again. No, we believe seriously we did do the right car here. And what I like about it is we're seeing now with the 6-cylinder, with the M versions, it shows other sides of personality of the car. Look at it, the stance is a little bit changed by the 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder still has that really delicate balance, and in the M version, wow, the car just sings.
I think this says it all, really. Here we are doing a TV interview and the people are just coming along ignoring us because they're just so desperate to get into the car, to feel it, to touch it, to sit in the thing, and I think that's the greatest. If it passes that test, it's got to be a winner. And of course it is a winner because in Britain, for example, it's already sold out virtually, I gather.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself here, maybe it's a rating of the car, it's got so many fingerprints on it. Yeah, that's good.
Very nice. Isn't that an absolutely gorgeous interior and a stunning example of a designer who's obviously genuinely passionate about the cars he designs? Well, we'll take a quick break now before Mr. Rutherford discovers the quirkier side of the Geneva show. Hi, this is Four Wheels Good, your weekly motoring magazine, right here on Granada Men and Motors channel. Well, it's time for our final report for this week from Geneva, including some beautiful and some more unusual designs from the motor show floor and a couple of British motoring journalists who made it the hard way to Switzerland. First of all, something a little more contemporary.
What is the world coming to? There's gorgeous Totti out there. There's some amazing cars out there. There's a brilliant atmosphere out there. And these people on the Opel/Vauxhall stand have resorted to virtual reality. Vauxhall Signum, the car of the future, highly fuel efficient, powerful engine. Don't talk about it, do it. Well, this might not look terribly significant, just another Vauxhall Corsa you might think, but in fact this is the new Corsa that's about to go on sale in Britain. If it's not on sale already, they'll certainly take your order for it as we speak. And it's important because it's got an engine, a 3-cylinder engine, that really is getting the opposition worried. Vauxhall say this is the most fuel efficient car in its class, thanks to that 3-cylinder engine. They've played very, very safe, I think a little too safe with the exterior design. I think they could have been a bit braver and made more changes to the architecture of the car. But they say they're playing safe. They're saying that the new engine in this car will be the selling point, and I've just got a feeling that they might be right. Here he is, my old mate Sabaro. Every year he turns up at the Geneva Motor Show and wheels out the weirdest, wackiest cars in Switzerland, if not the world. Barking or what? There's nothing worse than a styling company that produces kits that are over the top and grotesque, but this company is doing it in a nice subtle way. They're called Fab Design, and that's what I call a Fab Design. Well, a new name to me at the Geneva Motor Show, in fact a new name to me anywhere in the world, is Giuliotto, which is kind of complicated. Japanese company building cars in Italy, we hope.
Right, we hope so. And this is a very typical supercar design, actually made a Japanese designer, is Mr. Nakamura. and we are seeking the suitable business partner in Europe.
So designed by the Japanese, built in Italy.
Yes.
And what about power? Where does the engine come from?
From American Ford. Its maximum output will be 330, and I think the top speed will be 280 kilometers per hour.
Okay, is that a Ford V8?
Yes, it's the same engine as a Ford Mustang Cobra.
Okay. And what about the cost of a car like this? We must be talking, I don't know, 60, 70, $80,000?
To be honest, we haven't fixed yet, but we have a certain target of the retail price, which will be roughly 80,000 or 90,000 US dollars.
80, 90,000 US dollars. Okay. And where do you go from here? You have the design, you have the vehicle, a very nice prototype here. What is the next step for you?
Yeah, we are talking with a Lamborghini about the possibility of manufacturing of these vehicles, and we have to make up a development and a research and development, and finally reach the volume productions, we hope.
So if somebody falls in love with this car after seeing the program, what do? Can they get in touch with you in Tokyo and place an order?
Yes. Yeah, we take a note, and when the production is started or sales is started here in Europe, we will contact you immediately.
We're here at the Geneva show, and people get here in many varied ways. Some fly, some come by boat, and some choose to drive. And some like these two. This is Colin and Steve from Autocar. I think you've got the most unusual mode of transport. Could you just tell me for a second, Steve, how you got here yesterday?
Well, we came in a 1912 Model T Ford, which was the second car ever made in the Ford plant at Manchester in England. And in fact, although it seems unusual now, there were 15 million of them built, so it's not that unusual, really.
Okay, so how long, Colin, did the journey take you?
Just under 3 days. We left on Friday morning from Fleet Street, which is where Autocar was in Tudor Street, which is where Autocar was in 1912. Drove down to Dover, crossed over, stayed near Calais on Saturday morning, and then drove all Saturday, all Sunday, and got into Geneva on about lunchtime.
And you were averaging speeds of what? Tell me.
Probably 30, I should think. 38 down hills and 28 up hills, and 30 most of the time.
So only one more question, really. Why?
Well, it was a great thing to do. In fact, it was surprisingly quick. We found that there were plenty of times when we were as fast as the traffic, and it's only really when you drive a modern car on motorway that you make a lot of time more than we made. It was quite fast, and it was quite entertaining.
I imagine it's a very different driving experience to driving the cars of today. Did you have any kind of training, or did you get a chance to practice the car before you actually got behind the wheel?
We had to learn how to drive it. It has a very strange transmission. There's no gearbox. You have to work the gears on a pedal. There were times when we thought we were going to hit the wall or the bloke in front, but we managed it.
Any problems? Did you break down on the way?
No, there was a nut that came undone on the exhaust, but it's a very simple car, so we just stopped and did it up with a spanner, and off we went. So
don't forget the rattling number plate, Cole. We had
the front number plate developed a nasty rattle about halfway through, but we managed to put our heads together and use our engineering expertise and bodge that up. So
well, I had to battle 2 flights and 2 airports yesterday morning, and your journey sounds far more stress-free than mine. How are you getting back, Steve?
We're going to go the way you came. We're going to go back in. We'd like to drive, but we just haven't got the time. If we could do it, we'd love to go back in the Model T. It was great.
Fantastic. Still looking good after all those years, and manufactured only a few miles from this very studio at Granada Television. Well, after the break, we'll be zooming down to London's Mayfair again for another fireside chat with the legendary Stirling Moss. Do join us then. You're watching Four Wheels Good here on Granada Men and Motors. Now let's join Mike Rutherford in conversation with Stirling Moss, who gives us advice on how we can become a nation of better drivers.
Stirling, all very well, you know, all these measures, all these traffic calming measures and other ideas to curb the behaviour of people doing things wrong. Wouldn't it be a better idea to train people better in the first place?
Yes, it would. I mean, frankly, if the driving test was far more difficult, you had to be a better driver, shall I say, to pass, not just on knowing the answers. Certainly, I think a lot of things could go out of the window. I mean, really and truly, speed limits are necessary in certain places. Other places, they're not. Well, the driver should be, if he was an intelligent person, he should be able to know roughly where he should be able to go quickly or slowly. And these humps they put in the road, which are really appalling if you ride like on my scooter or if for ambulances and things like that and fire engines, they are appalling things. And truly, I don't think they should be necessary.
I mean, I've long said that speed isn't the problem, it's inappropriate speed.
Misuse of it.
Yeah, and so maybe as part of your driving test, actually teaching people the implications of driving too fast in residential areas, and perhaps being a little less lax on things like speeding on motorways, where, you know, if it's free, if it's open, if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, what the hell does it matter if you're doing 80, 85, 90, even more? Not that we want to encourage that. Seems to me much less of a problem.
No, but you see, the trouble is, the reason we don't want to encourage it is people will abuse it. That's the snag. You get somebody who goes out and says, oh God, now there's no limit, we can do something quite ridiculous. That is what we've got to try to make people realise, is that they've got to respect the position they're given, and I that is quite a big problem, I think.
Speed cameras, what are your feelings about those?
Well, I mean, the speed cameras, there's no doubt, I think they must have cut down the accident rate probably because people are worried about those things, but really and truly, it shouldn't be necessary for them. It is necessary, and I have to accept it. I think it's just a shame.
I was driving along the other day. I knew a speed camera was coming up. The bloke in front of me didn't. Did an emergency braking manoeuvre effectively because he would have been going through at about 85 miles an hour. I mean, that was all right because I was half expecting it. But I mean, if it was perhaps a foreign driver behind him or just somebody who was from out of town, I mean, it could have very nearly been a rear-end shunt just because driver number one does an emergency stop because he sees the camera at the last moment.
Yeah, unfortunately, those things happen, though. That is another of the problems that we bring in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a clean licence, despite the fact that you've done more than your fair share of speeding legally on tracks. I've driven with you. I mean, it's fair to say that you're a pretty rapid driver, but you do respect the speed limits on public roads. You've never had a speeding fine, I think I'm right in saying, or very few of them.
Yeah, I haven't had that many, considering the mileage I do, but and I do watch the rear view mirror too. But I think that it's a problem we've got to tackle this problem right from the start, and that you know, with the instructors who teach the people, the BSMs and all the other people, and also make sure that they do understand the implications of going quickly and what to do with the car.
But that means maybe more expensive driving tests, more expensive schooling throughout our careers. Seems to me another good idea is maybe test people every 5 years, see if they're still up to it. I mean, what would you say to those people who say, I can't afford all this extra cost in motoring?
Well, I'm afraid that I suppose really all one can say is that some money should be put back into that side of motoring that's taken from us in the cost of fuel. I mean, the cost of fuel now is enormous because of the tax.
I think something like 80% of what we pay for a gallon goes back to the Treasury.
Yeah, well, it goes obviously, I believe, into national health, which is very important also. But I do feel we ought to have some of it back to get over things like giving people the opportunity of having the tests, taking the tests.
Another argument of mine is that it would cost you a lot of money to do it this way, but it's money well spent. You know, we're talking about money that might save your life.
Yeah.
How can you afford not to spend that money?
But there are so many problems, I think, in the road which are addressed. One of my pet aversions actually is people who use a disabled ticket when they're not disabled. You know, in other words, they get their mothers or something, and I think that's an appalling thing. I think there are so many problems with the roads that really it does need a really serious looking into.
What about policing? I mean, we seem to be seeing these days a different approach to the policing of motorists than in the past. Of course, motorists have always been an easy touch for the police. I mean, you know, if you were a cop, who would you rather deal with? Some lunatic who's perhaps under the influence of drugs or drink and could actually want to put up some resistance, or a motorist who's not going to put up any resistance? You've got the number plate on his car, you've got him banged to rights. That's always been a problem, that the motorist has been an easy target, but it seems to me the motorist is becoming more and more an easy target. Are you sure that the police are not being a little heavy-handed with drivers these days?
I think it's inevitable they are sometimes, but I'm a great believer in the police because I think they do an awful lot of good. There are obviously sometimes bad ones or unnecessary things. Yes, I see them myself. But overall, and one has to take a view on it, I think overall that with the police are necessary. I mean, one of the unfortunate things is if somebody does something really bad on the road, you can sort of say, well, where's a policeman? He's not there.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And or not necessarily on the road, even walking in the street.
You wouldn't like to see them perhaps, well, let me put it to you this way, let's not ask you, let me tell you what I think. I reckon they should worry a little bit less about little people like you and I perhaps breaking the speed limit here and there, perhaps having a tax test that's a few days out, and worry a bit more about catching the real criminals out there. Because it seems to me the cameras and all the effort is pointed towards us guys because we're an easy touch. And the cameras and the effort should be really pointed at the bad guys.
Well, I'm sure they are after the bad guys. They were, you know, I mean, in truth, I mean, I don't know how many police are on one thing or another thing, but the one thing that really gets me more than most of those things, and that's people who they catch who are driving uninsured.
Yeah.
Now, that is appalling.
Yeah. Remind me of that story you told me a while ago about that day you were in the States. Yeah.
Well, no, I'd been, a guy picked me up at about 6 in the morning. He picked me up in a car called Old Yeller, which enthusiasts will know about. It was a great big American, junk thing, but a racing car. And I got in the car, I had my overalls on because they'd asked me to go down and open the circuit. And I got in this thing and I go off down the road. It was 6 in the morning and I was doing 45 miles an hour in a 30 zone and I got stopped. And a cop came up and they got the gun, the whole bit, and they had me on the side of the car like this, and I've got pale blue overalls on, you know, and he's frisked me. And, of course, I got nothing on. I got a few dollars in my pocket. In fact, I had $108, I think. So anyway, he said, come down to the station. They took me to the station, and the sheriff or whatever he was said, all right, it's $100 bail. I said, I haven't got $100, because $100 of that money happened to be given to me by my father to buy one of these things that you pick a stig's ear or something. I can't remember what it was called.
Because your father was
He was a pig farmer at the time, and this was one of these things that you get in America. And he said, well, you got $108. I said, well, it's not my money. I'm not going to take somebody else's money. He said, well, you go inside then. I said, well, all right, I'll go inside. I haven't had breakfast. It was now 7:30. I'll go inside. And I'll never forget it. It's a sort of long room with cells off it, and there was a chap, a convict, sitting at just by inside the door. There's a yellow line. They said you mustn't cross this yellow line, and he was sitting there with a box of candy. And now there a 10-cent Hershey bar was the thing. So I said, well, I've miffed breakfast. I'll have a 10-cent bar of Hershey. He said, well, that's 20 cents. I thought, well, that's something, you know, fair deal. So anyway, I had that for breakfast. Meanwhile, it was now getting later, of course, at the circuit. They said, where's Stirling Moss? He's come to. Somebody said, well, I think he's in the cooler. And so the Junior Chamber of Commerce came along and paid the bail to get me out to go and open the circuit. And that was I'm glad to say, the only time I've ever been inside, actually.
Okay, but just to be clear, you didn't pay your fine, you kept your father's $100 in
Yes,
tax.
I did, yeah,
okay.
yeah. I didn't pay the fine. The Junior Chamber paid my fine if it was paid, yes.
Well, I mean this in the nicest possible way, but we'll be back with Jailbird Stirling Moss at the same time next week.
And we'll look forward to that, Mike. Well, join us again next week when Mike Rutherford will have an exclusive interview with BMW's superboss, Herr Bernd Pischetreider. What really are their plans for Rover? Well, you'll find out next week from all of us here. Goodbye.